Whom I would like to invite now is Mrs. Nilufer Aktas. We have already seen her in the panel from the Turk Economy Bank. She will moderate the conversation with Tasha Vashisht, from the senior manager from the Scorpio partnership. And Tasha will actually present the highlights of the fourth Global Entrepreneurship report in terms of impact. They will do it in form of a conversation, so your 15 minutes are here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry about that. So, Tasha, let me try turn you somehow. Yeah. So welcome, Tasha, and welcome everyone to the World Business Angel Forum Impact Summit today. So as Renata actually introduced, Tasha is from Scorpio Partners from London. It's a strategic advisory forum, and actually you're working with BNP Paribas to launch, this is the fourth edition, I guess, the Entrepreneurship reports every year. This year, it is interesting because the report actually covers the motivations of entrepreneurs for social impact. So today my role is actually very short. I'm going to let Tasha to highlight the findings of this BNP Paribas Entrepreneurship Report 2018, and hopefully this is going to give the audience or grasp the motivation of entrepreneurs towards impact investment and social investments. So Tasha, could you please tell us, first of all, what those reports are all about?
Yes, certainly. So the 2018 Global Entrepreneur Report researched 2,700 multimillionaire entrepreneurs based in 22 countries around the world. And they really are the faces of successful entrepreneurship. They have a net investable assets of $13.4 million. They've typically started 3 companies, and collectively they employ 450,000 people across the world. So they are very impressive business leaders. And we were interested to understand what motivates them in some of their personal experiences, but also what influence they've managed to have on the world around them. And the data we've received as a result has shed some really interesting light on the differences by age, by region, and also by wealth level. Mm-hmm. So as you said, this is the 4th year of our partnership with BNP Paribas Wealth Management. Mm-hmm. In 2015, we focused more on the origins, so who these people are, where they come from. In 2016, we focused on 2 profiles that are particularly interesting to this audience. So millennials, everyone's obsessed with the millennials. Yeah. They're the people who've managed to be successful before they've even reached the age of 35. And women entrepreneurs as well are a key focus. In 2017, we started to look more at motivations from entrepreneurs. And then this year, the focus has been on impact, positive social impact. And so we've looked into this in terms of 3 different lenses: the impact that entrepreneurs have had through their businesses, through their personal lives, and then finally through their investments, which is obviously very relevant to today's summit.
Exactly. So actually, which leads us to this year's report, which is dedicated to the quest for positive impact. So just a figure to begin with, as far as I'm not mistaken, it's 39%. And this is, when you compare it to the previous years, what is the increase or the decrease?
Yes, the figure that really struck us from the research is that 39% of successful entrepreneurs now say that they measure their personal success in terms of positive social impact. And that's a striking change from even a couple of years ago when only 1 in 10 was prioritizing this area. So obviously this is a significant increase. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've taken away from this is that, entrepreneurs do not operate in a vacuum. Exactly. And particularly in relation to the planet and in relation to environmental degradation, they're increasingly concerned about some of the threats that they've witnessed on the policy horizon. But they're also quite optimistic people, naturally, and they believe in the power that they have as business leaders to make change and actually find solutions to problems, which is what we've been discussing today in some detail. As a result, many of them have, seen sustained profit increases, sustained increases in revenue generation. And the next big challenge for them is how do you actually implement positive social impact through their businesses and through their investments. And the ways in which they're doing this, broadly speaking, is by focusing on job creation. Mm-hmm. It's by focusing on how to invest to safeguard the environment and also to transition towards clean energy. And then also how they use their personal time to advance social causes they care about. But as a whole, we've seen that social impact is definitely becoming a priority for entrepreneurs.
So can we say that for entrepreneurs, the definition of success is now kind of shifting to social impact?
I think we obviously have to be careful because, making a profit is still their primary motivation. Mm-hmm. So clearly they need to see returns on their initial investment. But what we've discovered is that actually social impact, making a positive social impact, is that secondary metric. For highly successful business people, they are now measuring themselves according to two metrics. And I think that's a really core point to take away for anyone who's looking to service them. Mm-hmm. Some interesting, I think, points to bring out, coming back to the millennials, they are much more likely to hold themselves to a higher standard and to focus on positive social impact. So something like half of millennials say that they don't believe they can be successful in business unless they've made a positive social impact. We also see something quite similar in the emerging economies. So if you look at China, Indonesia, India, Taiwan, in some of these markets, the entrepreneurs have seen macroeconomic growth that has afforded them huge opportunities, but it's also brought about challenges, and they have decided to contribute in their own way through job creation, and they're running much bigger businesses than you would generally see on average. So you can get a sense of how different this term impact means. For a lot of entrepreneurs, it is at least partially about empowering people to have good, sustainable work. And for others, it's more in line with their investments.
Exactly, and I think according to the report, it changes based on the geography. So some countries are more into clean energy, some are more into the social justice issue, maybe. So we learned that their main priorities to make an impact are, if I get it right, the environment, job creation, and clean energy.
Yes, that's correct. So just a couple of stats from the report, which include that 55%, a majority of entrepreneurs, have some responsible investments. So, we've obviously talked as a summit about whether actually, there's a lot of talk, but is the money actually following through? And I think our research shows that they are allocating proportions of their portfolios towards responsible investments. Not huge amounts, but some amounts. And a majority of entrepreneurs have done that. As you say, the priorities look quite different by region. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Asia, for example, over 50% of entrepreneurs in that market, in that region, are very focused on the environment. Whereas in the US and the Middle East, job creation is the number one priority. In Europe, it's much more about clean energy. So there are some regional differences here that really illustrate the priorities that entrepreneurs have.
Exactly. And what about in terms of their investment choices?
In terms of their investment choices, equity funding is still the dominant vehicle. There's also some clear trends towards investing in environmentally focused businesses as well as social businesses. Mm-hmm. The main point I would make is that there is this voracious appetite from the emerging economies, so Brazil, the Middle East, a lot of Asia. The take-up, not just the interest, but the take-up of these responsible investment vehicles is typically higher than in other markets. So in response to some of these challenges I mentioned earlier, where macroeconomic change has brought around a lot of opportunities but also challenges, investors are reacting quite strongly towards that and taking up opportunities to find responsible outcomes and solutions.
It's kind of like the mind setup shift of millennials, especially the ones who are exited from their investments earlier. Now they have this dedication to give back. And since they are very into technology as well, they have the means to scale up their investments. So they are not ready to give up the returns yet, and they are still trying to make an impact, I guess. So what about ESG investments?
So in ESG investments, the flows are concentrated on a couple of core hubs. So China in the east attracts a lot of flows in terms of local and international investors. Mostly on the international scene, the flows are coming from Hong Kong and Taiwan. In the west, the US is still the predominant hub, and it's obviously got a very strong domestic market, but then equally is attracting more ESG flows from places like the UK, the UAE, and Brazil.
Brazil, I guess,
well.
yeah. So Tasha, you said many things, but if I want to unpick here some of them, so more than half of entrepreneurs have socially responsible investments. So correct me if I'm wrong, but 80% believe entrepreneurship is the best way to have a global or local impact. So can you give us some examples, some real examples of what global or local impact looks like in terms of their investments?
Yes, I can. I think the best way to unpick a question like that is actually to give some concrete examples, because I think the thing with impact is that it really will reflect the personal priorities of the business owner in question. And one of the aspects of my role that I enjoy most is speaking to people and actually discussing with them how they've been able to have an impact through their personal ventures. And so just to give a couple of examples of how different this can look, I spoke to one very impressive serial entrepreneur based here in Turkey, who, she's a chairwoman of a Fortune 500 company, and she's set up her own women's investment platform. And her focus is, women are not there to be helped. However, she said, am able, with my experience, to provide financing and an investment hub for them to inspire women-led entrepreneurship here in Turkey. And so she's done that because that's her priority, and diversity is her priority. On the other hand, I spoke to another entrepreneur based in Singapore, and he was approaching this much more from a sort of macroeconomic perspective, where, in Thailand, in Singapore, in Malaysia, some of the demographic change and the social inequality that has brought about has proved very problematic. So he invests in a social enterprise, and one of the earliest initiatives that he got involved in was actually intervening in a prison call center and coming up with a change to the compensation system so that the inmates who work at that call center could start to increase their take-home pay. And his view was, dignity with work, help people to see the rewards of working hard, and thereby help their reintegration into society. So whatever the priority of the different entrepreneur, the way in which they can enact this and get to market, it looks very different. And I think that's the exciting challenge within this topic.
And it's also very interesting. There are some trends in the report in relation to how entrepreneurs support other businesses that are not their own. What can you tell us what might be of interest to this audience?
Yes, so we know a few clear things about the different business investment vehicles that entrepreneurs use globally. So take-up of private equity across the high net worth entrepreneurial audience is now at 29%. So 29% of entrepreneurs are investing in other high growth businesses to help their trajectory because they think they've got high potential. And that's particularly popular in the US and in also the Middle East. And it's growing in countries like Poland, Turkey, Spain, so some interesting changes over time. Venture capital as well, we've seen that really shoot up in the last couple of years in the US, and it's certainly becoming more popular in places like Hong Kong and Taiwan as well. So yeah, some really interesting trends in the data.
So we are in the World Angel Investment Forum. Is it possible for an entrepreneur also to be an angel investor? Do they have time?
Yeah, I don't know how they manage to find time, but some of them do. Our research suggests, I think from memory, one in six entrepreneurs are also angel investors. So they find the time.
1 in 6.
1 in 6. They also find the time to do this. Admittedly, the allocations are small. It's 5% of their total wealth is towards this. But it is interesting, and clearly they believe in their own ability to spot and support high growth businesses.
Is it the millennialpreneurs again coming up to the stage regarding to that?
Yeah, so younger entrepreneurs are, I think there's a reason why people are so interested in them, because they are a very proactive generation. And yes, they're twice as likely to be angel investors than the over 55s. They're 4 times more likely to be impact investors. And I think the thing to take away about millennial investors is that they really don't see any reason not to get involved. If they know about it, then they will be curious about what they can do. And I think that's the challenge for the industry, is to understand how to convert that mindset, either with other people who aren't aware, but also acknowledge the fact that where millennials are now is where the industry is going to be in 5 to 10 years' time. So getting ready for that demand, which will come, is key.
Yeah, and it's also the millennials actually who are going to inherit the 40% of the high net worth wealth of globally in 40 years of time. That's why maybe they are that much important for impact investment. So does the research give us any indication of where these trends are heading? So are you brave enough to make such predictions for us?
Yes, I just caught Renata's eye, so I know that we're running out of time, but the main prediction that I would make would be around the business investment side. So when we asked entrepreneurs to project how they anticipate their portfolios will change in the next 5 years, they do expect significant increases towards impact investments, but also to startup financing and private equity. So those are the three instruments that I would expect to see gain increased appetite and demand from entrepreneurs.
Perfect. Just one last question. What are your key takeaways from the report, if you want to summarize it, like just in a couple of sentences?
So I think with entrepreneurs, remember, yes, they are in business to make money, but they also have brought a socially conscious mindset to what they do in the day-to-day, so running their businesses, and to their investments. But they're quite, they do make decisions based on their heads as well as their hearts. Yeah. So understanding that the financial case needs to be well articulated is key to increasing the portfolio allocations over time, because currently they are low. They're there, but they're low. And I think just remembering as well what their priorities are and how linked they are to the natural world, to reversing environmental degradation and towards job creation will help in conversations with entrepreneurs.
Perfect. Thank you very much for everyone. So hard copies are for the ones who would like to collect their hard copies. It must be on the tables. And if you want to download the report, you just go to www.wealthmanagementbnpparibas.com or the Facebook of BNP Paribas, or you can download our app Voice of Wealth for this soft copy of the report. Thank you very much for everyone.